Hi, Vinka. Vinka is my most
Hi,
one of
hi.
my most loyal viewers.
Good evening and happy Translators Day.
That's right. Happy Translators Day. We can't forget that. Um,
That's right. It's um Saint Jerome? Saint Jerome
Yes, and he's from Dalmatia.
from Dalmatia.
Yes, he's called Saint Jerome of Dalmatia.
and that's where you are too,
That's
Vinka.
where I'm from. Yeah.
Yeah, Vinka usually brings a glass of wine as
Or
well because
beer,
it's a
beer, wine. Yeah.
As
But
long as
it's
you bring enough for
Monday. But it's
everyone.
Monday. Yeah, it's Monday. So, you know.
Hi, Chantal. I was just in Toronto with Chantal last week. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Stefan. How are you?
All right, I'm
Did
excited.
you have a good trip back home?
Say it again.
Was your trip back home
Oh,
okay?
uneventful. It was a short hop. I
Yeah,
actually
that's
caught some Z's, and I was back in Texas before I knew it.
Oh, great.
All right, let's get started, shall we? As people trickle in, I'm here with Dieter Runge this afternoon, who is joining us from Vancouver, I believe, right? For the moment, Dieter.
I am. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, actually on Vancouver Island,
All
and
right.
about middle of the island in an area called the Comox Valley.
All right. And Dieter typically lives in Australia. So when I found out he was going to be on the West Coast, I thought it would make for a little bit better of a program time from the West Coast than it was going to be if I had to schedule something in Australia and do it really early in the morning or late at night for him.
This
And so here we are. Couple of housekeeping items as usual. Discussions are community events, so I like people to be involved in the conversation. I've prepared some salty questions for Dieter that will keep him on his toes. But if you have anything to contribute, please do so. Don't hesitate to put your microphone on. I'm notoriously bad at recognizing people's hands in the audience, so that's not going to work. If you have a question, feel free to open up your microphone, and then I'll invite you into onto the podium, and you can be part of the discussion like we do every single time. Um, Dieter, as we get started, you're for those people that don't know you, you're one of the original founders of a company called Boostlingo, and I will let you introduce yourself a little bit more and frame who you are in specific a bit more yourself. Somebody's having their microphone on again. I looked the last time what I could do to mute everybody. There's a button here somewhere.
the mute all button,
The mute all button.
most important, but the
I
most
know.
of them all.
Go ahead, introduce
Well, I
yourself.
think
I'll keep on looking.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's fun. Well, so yeah, for those of you out there in the audience, my name is Dieter Runge. I am a co-founder at Boostlingo. Boostlingo is a SaaS platform, a technology company, and a software company. We provide a platform, tools, and technologies for the interpreting space, and that includes on-demand interpreting platform for remote interpreting services. We also have a scheduling platform for on-site, face-to-face interpreting. So language service providers that do, a blend of on-site and remote interpreting. They have a platform to effectively run their business end to end. And then in addition to that, we have an RSI platform. So for remote simultaneous interpreting, for conference interpreting, that's called Boost Lingo Events, and it's provides the ability to support multilingual events remotely as well. And then we have a suite of AI tools to support all of these things. and provide, speech to text captioning, and some of the sort of burgeoning new speech to speech, language identification. Slowly releasing AI tools that make sense in support to augment and power the techno savvy interpreter out there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like the makeup of your clients, the majority of your clients, would they be LSPs? Are they how does that fall
Yeah,
out, so to speak?
I would, yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, our direct channel would be language service providers, whether that's an LSP, LSC, or it could be, a language, an organization that provides language services. There's refugee placement agencies and charities out there that use our platform. There's healthcare and telehealth folks that use our platform as well. Some court systems use us as well. So it's a blend, but
Yeah.
yeah, our main focus has been on the language service provider space.
Awesome. So you already touched on it, and it's, one of my core interests is how technology is morphing the industry and changing it. And I'm very curious what your take is on how AI is currently being utilized in interpreting services in creative ways. So maybe you can give us the Boost version of what's going on in technology a little bit. I'd love to find out from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously you can't turn a corner these days and not hear about some new cool thing happening in the AI space. And I know that it also is causing some distress in the interpreting community in terms of, where is this all headed? But listen, there's no doubt that AI is having a profound impact on the interpreting space these days. It's being used to support various aspects of interpretation services, whether we're talking about advances in speech recognition and natural language processing, or about the development of automated speech to text, real-time captioning, which I mentioned, translation tools are being embedded in there. The reality is that these days, AI is aiding interpreters by automating some of their more mundane and repetitive tasks. For example, generating job-specific glossaries or terminology databases, or providing on-the-fly support with real-time transcription tools. Automated speech recognition systems will, in the RSI space, very helpful. From what I see, the potential of AI is unlimited in my estimation, and its ability to revolutionize and change our industry is quite significant. I think we're going to see, even greater innovation and development in this space. A lot more advancements in machine learning that will lead to more sort of context-aware, domain-specific capabilities. And we're just going to see that AI is really going to be there to augment the overall experience for the interpreter.
How do you balance the new technologies with human input? What's the Boostlingo perspective on that?
Well, what do you mean balance, like between the use of AI and when?
Yeah, what are the key challenges that you're encountering with implementing these new technologies right now? There's a lot of fear out there in the community, I think, of being replaced. Where do you see humans fitting in, and where do you see machines fitting in?
Well, listen, I think AI tools are assistants for humans, right? I think that's the way I think they need to be understood. They're here to help reduce, the cognitive load, streamline workflows. They're tools that offer quick access to multilingual resources for interpreters. And I like to say AI is the augmented interpreter. It's the advanced interpreter. It's the able interpreter. I always try to bring a message of positivity and let interpreters know that, yeah, it's gonna, you know, some of the things that interpreters are used to doing, some of those things, you know, may disappear or be less important, but that will free up the interpreter to focus on activities that really require human interaction. There's just no two ways about it, right?
What are the differences between the types of interactions you think that really work? What are some of the ones that you think, okay, that one we really need to have a human being, and that one we can automate more?
Well, the role of the human interpreter is inexorably shifting from being just solely a language transmitter and becoming more of a professional language consultant, right? I think AI takes, like I said, it takes on more of the repetitive and lower level tasks. Human interpreters will increasingly become more focused on the complex, high context, high stakes situations where nuance, emotion, other cultural sensitivities are far more critical. The shift is already happening, and you know, this is where, you know, you'll see more value in you know, the community, healthcare, legal settings, where understanding not just the words but the intent behind the communication is fundamentally essential. But again, there's no doubt, and these technologies are pushing interpreters to stay ahead of the technological trends, and the ones that get it will be adopting new tools to enhance their performance, you know, for projects that are out there.
Does Boost have any special tools that are AI driven that interpreters can use that would be that you could
Absolutely.
highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, and, you know, keep in mind that we don't build things just because we can, right? It's always predicated on, number one, does it solve a business problem? Does it solve you know, an issue in the market? How does it support the interpreter to do a better job? How does it improve, you know, workflow? How does it streamline the process? And so, yeah, we have tools that can provide, you know, speech to text captioning. We have tools that we're actually even releasing some speech to speech tools as well in the RSI space. There, you know, there are a number of ways that, you know, the terminology management, we will be introducing more and more of these support technologies for the interpreter, so that they can focus on the linguistic, the linguistic job that needs to get done versus being mired in things that the machine can provide, right?
Okay. And how's the role of the interpreter himself or herself evolving, you think, because of these new technologies?
Well, you know, I think that, sorry, how is the role
Of the interpreter, him or herself, evolving with the advent of these new technologies? Like, do you think interpreters are going to need a new skill set going further, or how is that
well,
really more from
yeah, I
what
mean,
you see in your community?
I mean, it's the same as you know, everywhere, right? Like we're all going to have to upskill over time, right? But listen, human interpreters bring many irreplaceable strengths to the AI enhanced environment, right? Culture competence, like human interpreters understand subtleties of culture, tone, and just context that machines struggle to grasp. And this is especially important in the types of situations where, you know, misinterpretation can have significant or even severe consequences.
Yeah.
You know, you take a look at you know, a medical or legal setting. You can't get it wrong. interpreters have, to use a term, emotional intelligence. They can read the room. They can read the emotional states of both. As far as I know, there is no AI yet that can do this. I'm never going to say never, right? But interpreters can read the room, the emotional states of both the speakers and the listeners, and they can adjust the tone and style to match the needs of that situation. This is something that AI is not yet capable of doing, at least in my understanding, not effectively yet.
Yeah.
Ethical judgment too, right? Humans are capable of making ethical decisions in the spur of the moment, right? Particularly in situations where confidentiality, impartiality, or accuracy are absolutely paramount.
Yeah. Very good. I was going to ask you, what are some of the primary benefits of using a unified platform for managing interpreting services, and how can they improve operational efficiency?
Okay, well, of a unified platform, well, I think we probably need to define what a unified platform is, right? So, as you know, Stefan, Boostlingo invented the first unified interpreting platform. So, speaking only for the interpreting IMS space, for clarification here, a unified platform centralizes sort of all the critical interpretation services, whether that's scheduling, interpreter coordination, communications, all the admin functions, reporting, invoicing, all that good stuff. The idea is like looking through one single pane of glass, right? Where it allows the LSP to coordinate interpreters across multiple locations, languages, and business sectors efficiently. It simplifies the booking processes of that, whether that's live or on demand, and being able to quickly identify, an interpreter's skill set, their availability, their location. It's something we call intelligent routing. You need a medical interpreter with a specific language pair, but they also need to have experience in open heart surgery. The system needs to be able to identify that from your pool of interpreters who can match that requirement for the end user. And then all of this, is housed in the system to provide ongoing data insights, interpreter performance, client satisfaction, just to help make better decision-making improvements in the service for your interpreting service company.
So there's a lot of reporting that you have along with that as well.
Absolutely. Just getting your arms around your interpreting business is quite a substantial process. So, the other thing, obviously, is that these unified platforms are multilingual communication platforms, right? They integrate communication tools to ensure that you have real-time collaboration between your end user, your clients, interpreters, again, through one pane of glass without needing to use multiple systems, trying to keep it all under the hood.
Yeah. And companies that sign up with Boostlingo, they can use their own interpreters, or they're using your interpreters. How does that work?
So we take a very agnostic position in terms of that. The platform allows you to onboard and import your own interpreters. You can work entirely with your own pool of interpreters. We do have what we call the B Hub, the Boostlingo Hub. Roughly, don't quote me on this, and Carolina kill me, but I think, if I get this number wrong, I think we have about 30,000 interpreters who are in the network now. So these are interpreters that are able to understand how to use the platform, how to log on, how to support. They are adhere to a code of ethics. They have the requisite experience, and it's across, it's a global dispersion of interpreters. but the system, you can toggle to it if you need it, helps you scale when you need it. But if you don't, you could just work with your own resources, or you can connect to a call center or what have you. But we take a very, you know, like I said, a very agnostic approach to this, and it's really to provide the immediacy is what's important in on-demand interpreting, and that means that you know, especially you know, when we talk about languages of a lesser diffusion, it's very hard sometimes to find specific language pairs. Well, we've generated this B hub so that if you need it, it's there. But if you just need, you know, to use your own resources, perfectly fine to do that.
Okay. If anybody in the audience wants to ask a question, feel free to join in. I know Jonas, you're typically pretty vocal, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free if you have something to contribute, you're welcome to do so.
Thanks. I'm just like, I have so many, but I was just like, okay, I'm not going to ask because I don't want to take so much time. But it's like every single thing that Dieter is saying is like, I have, okay, but why do you do this? How do you do that? And so one of the questions that I would have, just at the last part that you said with a hub, how do you, or the company, or someone who's managing this type of platform, my concern is how do they manage the quality, doing the quality of the interpreters themselves, the qualifications? How do they know that it's a high quality? Because I see a lot of in the world that all these agencies using, especially using those centralized things, that sometimes they don't vet. And then I see it with the customer, the client, and I'm on site, that problem is that, well, my God, this is not an interpreter, it's a bilingual person.
Yeah.
They need to be it. How do you kind of do that quality assurance and control of all that?
That is a fantastic question and a very important question. And I am lucky enough, I just saw Catherine Allen pop up in the
yeah, she's been there.
Stefan, can I throw that to Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're having a discussion, not just a podcast. So, Catherine, feel free to join in.
I have like the 18 here
and give Jonas some insight on the qualifications of the interpreters and how you manage that.
So can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So it's a great question, and I think it's the biggest challenge in the remote field in general, because the demand is so high and will continue to be high because there's no way to actually fulfill all the compliance needs in the United States, right? Without that continuing to be true. For Boostlingo in particular, we actually do, I work on the quality assurance side and on the training side. We actually do have a 3-year interpretation experience qualification to be able to be up on the platform as a Boostlingo hub interpreter. That may not be true for the clients who use the software, you know, for their own set of interpreters, but for the Boostlingo hub interpreters, we actually do vet every single interpreter that's on the platform. We have a whole team that vets their profile, their CV, their proficiency, their, you know, the certificates they say they have. So they kind of go through a double vetting because the partner vets them first, and then they send their qualifications over to our team and we vet them as well. So on that end, that's real. That vetting is real. It is extremely challenging though. I mean, I just, you know, I see the ongoing demand and the spikes, and I just wonder how we're going to sustain this workforce without throwing a lot more resources into this workforce, right? Because we're asking an awful lot of it, and of the language service providers who are trying to, you know, fulfill this demand. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Dieter, but in terms of asking about the hub, that is part of the process we go through.
No, I'm glad I got my 18 with me.
So, but I mean, that is for the part of vetting it, but then how you maintain when they're actually performing, if there is any kind of feedback or kind of
So yeah, there's a whole quality assurance team, and so there's various things that happen. There's daily testing calls, that are more random. There are some clients turn on recording, and then you can review any call. We do have a process for if there is a complaint or a problem with an interpreter, and you put that complaint in, there's a 48-hour process where it gets researched on both ends. The interpreter gets interviewed, the client gets interviewed, try and figure out what the process is. If the interpreter can be upskilled or retrained or, supported, they are. If it's egregious and they can't be, they get pulled off the platform. They might either just get banned from the platform altogether, or they may be banned for that particular customer. But it's just there's a whole team that's kind of dedicated to this day in, day out, trying to do it. And then the other piece we have, which is what I'm working on, is providing internal training from the Boostlingo side that we are beginning to run every single hub interpreter through to just get that consistency. So everybody's getting the same training around codes of conduct and ethics, and everybody's getting the same training around the technology to try and level that out, right, between the partners. So it's very proactive.
Because sorry, this is a follow up really quickly. Because one thing that I see most of the time, the end client, because they do not speak the language, they don't know if the person is doing a good job or not.
Right.
And then if they do, I had a case that the client, I was doing it with another interpreter for a conference. They came and complained to me, and I was like, well, it doesn't help to complain to me. You have to complain to the agency, or otherwise that is not corrected. Do you have something that you educated the end client how to deal with the interpreter and kind of see if they're doing a good job? So in order for them to actually make a complaint, so you can do the quality assurance and do a retraining or something like that, is there anything?
I think I think you've kind of pinpointed a really great issue. We are just beginning to get more on our end. I mean, I think client education materials exist across the board, but inserting them into that quality assurance moment, and like the moment when you start the service, the moment when you train your staff on how to work with interpreters the way you're supposed to, which is actually a federal, I mean, if you're in healthcare and other regulated spaces, it's actually a big part of the requirement is that you train your staff how to work effectively with the language services, not just have the language services available. I feel like this is a big weak point in the industry in general. So we're starting to put up materials and embed that into our QA process so that when the problem around the complaint has more to do with the management of the session from the client end, right, than it does on the interpreter end. But how, and encouraging clients like, hey, the interpreter's there to facilitate the communication. You're still in charge of this communication, right? Just because it's interpreted doesn't mean now the interpreter's in charge of how this is going. You as the provider, still need to be in charge of this. So I'd say that we're at the beginning end of really making that formalized. Of course, we communicate it as much as we can, when in every opportunity. But I do feel like this is an area where the profession as a whole, could step up.
It is a very important point about our industry, right? Like, it's a giant leap of faith when you connect to an on-demand interpreter in terms of, well, how do I, especially, for the, average end user who, it's not clear if, why is this interpreter qualified to do this? And certainly if you don't speak the language, you're not going to know either. You have to take that leap of faith, which is why certification organizations are so important, and harmonizing a standard on a global level, I think is going to be really, really important. If an interpreter from Europe joins a call, or an interpreter from the US or an interpreter from Australia, how do you know it's apples to apples? You don't. There are certain assurances you can, and levels of confidence you can take. If you know that you've got a medical interpreter that's CHI core or CHI certified, NATI certified from Australia, there are a number of, accreditations and certifications that you can have a reasonable level of confidence of who is representing you, in a language access situation. But I think it's definitely something that our industry on the whole needs to grapple with. And you look into other when I walk into a doctor's office, I always take a look and see what school did that doctor go to, and what are their credentials, and again, you have to take a leap of faith there as well. But it's important to instill that level of confidence in the end users. So I think it's something that technology providers like Boostlingo and LSPs and anybody engaged in the language service industry needs to take very seriously and work towards that ideal.
Miliana, you had a question. Did you want to come ask the question, or should I ask it for you?
I can ask a question. It's
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the language proficiency and testing interpreting skills, when the job seekers, interpreters are first applying, are you using in-house resources, or are you using third party? And I'm not asking about the interpreters that already have CHI or 40-hour medical interpreting training, or not to go even with the court training, which is even another story. So are you using, again, your in-house resources, or are you using a third party to test and vet those interpreters?
So, I mean, we have a pretty substantial language access department, which Catherine is, part of. And initially, depending on what the requirement is, but we work with a number of agencies that provide and contribute to the B Hub. We do, spot testing here and there, so we rely on internal staff to do that. But the actual, vetting and training and upskilling and all of that, we rely on partners to. I don't, is that your question? Like who actually administers
it's more about your hub interpreters than your partner interpreters, because usually partner interpreters have they probably have their own their own flow and how they test and how they accept interpreters in their pool. But about your hub, because saying 30,000 interpreters that you have, smart, they are all tested by third party, they don't have qualifications, they're universally approved.
Well, they have to provide evidence of that. I don't know.
Let me just jump in, Dieter. Yeah. And I think there just may be a misunderstanding. Boostlingo does not directly contract with interpreters, right? So whether it's on our clients using the platform for their own needs or our backstop partners, we are working with LSPs, right? So we're not directly hiring. Others are recruiting and hiring and training, and we're vetting their processes so that you get the double vetting. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dieter. I just wanted to.
No, that's exactly what I want to say. Is that...
So what you do is you have LSP that uses your services, and as they onboard the interpreters, then you are kind of double checking their credentials. And with some of the languages of lesser diffusion, language proficiency is big, not just on the English level. It's also, it's sometimes you don't know how well they speak, the other, their native language, and is that a really a good level of language to interpret? So that's why I'm asking: are you validating by the third party, or you're using your in-house sources for that?
Yeah, I mean, we would, especially for particularly language of a lesser diffusion and certain indigenous languages. it is very challenging, and let's face it, there's languages out there that there are no certification programs available. So this is a challenge. Our expectation is, that the BHub partner agencies, provide sufficient evidence of those competencies, and we do spot check things, but there are certainly certain languages where we have to rely on the agency the third party agency to provide that level of level of confidence that individual is qualified to take.
For the customers out there, I think probably the alternative would be not be in service at all in some of these languages. So when you're getting requests that are really, really exotic, and you can provide service in them, if there's no programs available for interpreters to get the adequate training, then you're kind of stuck with the opportunities that are left, I would assume, right?
Well, yeah, and that's it. I mean, obviously, we're not going to just grab somebody off the nurse's station who's bilingual. Being bilingual
Right.
doesn't make you an interpreter. There is a minimum amount of experience and qualification that every single interpreter that's in that network has to provide some evidence of. And like I said, when we started Boostlingo, I onboarded the first, I think, 400 or 500 interpreters myself. So I know it takes a long time to get to a critical mass for any particular language that we're trying to support. And there's some languages out there, the global pool of experienced interpreters could be, certain languages, it might be 5 people. There's just some languages out there that are just super underserved. But
I once took a project for the government for the census into Navajo, and there's like 3 people that write that language in the United States. I found one of them, and then that person promptly disappeared from the grid for 3 weeks. And I was up a creek, and I learned a lesson there really, really quickly, that you better double check the feasibility of something, because that person was a professor at the University of Arizona, I think. And when they resurfaced, they said, "Yeah, well, I was on the reservation. I don't have any connection there." Well, yeah, I was waiting on the project to be finished. And it was really, really challenging. I'm sure that there's certain languages where it's really incredibly difficult to find proper coverage, because there's simply no adequate training available. I was
going to say, one encouraging thing that I'm seeing is that there's been there's been a growth in preservation and support for indigenous languages in a lot of places between the U.S., Australia, where there is a renewed focus on making sure that these languages, that there's training out there, that there are programs to support them, and get people excited about being interpreters and being translators for these languages that didn't have the support previously. So I'm definitely seeing that this is becoming more prevalent across the U.S., Canada, and certainly where I am in Australia. There's been a renewed focus on that as well.
Maybe AI can help document some of the really rare ones as well, and actually help with the conservation of the language. That's something that we've discussed a couple of times here as well, I think.
I'm aware of actually some programs in the US that are using AI to support a whole new class of indigenous language. So I saw a great article on this, actually, where students are reviving languages that were on their way towards extinction. And AI factors heavily in helping them do that. So
I think that's
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's something that linguists have been doing, and I think that AI will help them because as a linguist, they've been doing this, trying to preserve or revive
Yeah.
the dying languages. And I think with AI now, it will be much easier to preserve and revive. Also, there's a lot of interest in learning those languages. One thing that I would like to say too, that's another problem. That's one thing that we're trying to do in our department, or I'm with the AT, the educators division. And one thing that we see in the world is trying to reduce the gap between academia and the workplace and the skills, because a lot of us are retiring, we're leaving,
Yeah.
and the interest in language learning has decreased a little bit in all the universities in the US. So because a lot of people do not know what they can do with the language skills, they only think that they can only teach.
Yeah.
Right. So have you guys done anything and try to be part of that in order to kind of not just revive, but it kind of show interest and shorten the gap between the industry and kind of partner with the academia so they can provide more classes and training for people who wants to be interpreters and translators?
Yeah. So I mean that I would agree that that's going to become increasingly more important. And when I lived in the US, I used to get super excited about demonstrating our platform. I traveled to Middlebury a few times to get students excited about technology. And I am seeing, there are some language departments that are providing the tools and the seats to students to use the technology. And it frightens me sometimes to think that you could get through, 4 years of undergrad and 2 years of a master's program and not have ever touched a piece of translation technology or interpreting technology. It's like, wow. And then it becomes incumbent on the LSPs and on tech providers like Boostlingo to shore up that delta in technology proficiency, right? I think it's, again, I don't want to put Catherine on the spot, but I think it's something we're looking at, right? I think it's something that I would be very keen to be for us to be involved in. And I think it's going to become increasingly more important, especially for those languages that where we're finding that there just isn't. The fact is that the demand for certain languages exceeds the available amount of qualified linguists to support it globally. Every country I go to, it's a continuing challenge to find folks, especially across certain languages and with particular specialties, and also who have the technology chops to support the session. Whether you like it or not, now if you're a linguist, you're also an IT worker at this point. You have to be.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You have to.
What are your strategies, Dieter, to meet the growing demand of the global markets? Do you have any specific strategies that you're employing to meet the demand?
For strategies for,
so that you can keep up with the growing demand for language services worldwide. What are your strategies at Boostlingo?
in terms of getting the technology into,
in terms of technology, in terms of coverage, in terms of servicing your customers?
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged sort of approach, right? I mean, we have we have customers in just about every continent now, except Antarctica, maybe. I would love to have a customer in Antarctica. But to answer your question, I think expanding language access to and for everyone is the dream, right? The fact of the matter is that the global demand for interpretation services is growing rapidly, and it has always, and for now, continues to exceed our ability to provide. But we'll get there. So I think continued innovation and development and developing remote and hybrid interpretation models, offering both remote and hybrid interpretation services, which will allow providers to reach larger audiences globally beyond just the logistical constraints of in-person services. And please know, I'm not saying or preaching replace or displace in-person interpreting. However, interpreting platforms scale up exponentially the number of interpreters available and allow them to work from anywhere and at any time, right? So I'm a huge proponent of additional focus and growth on those underserved languages, as we discussed, identifying and investing in languages that are lean and underrepresented in the interpretation industry. And, we have our language access team, which is focused on that. And this will create new opportunities for growth and address global needs for LSPs as well. Again, we're continuing to build out and grow our suite of AI tools, leveraging AI and automation for language providers can impact real differences. Automated language tools, real-time translation, transcription power, captioning, all of that. This can, again, like I mentioned before, this will augment and support those lower stakes tasks that will allow human interpreters to focus on the more complex assignments. And I think that this hybrid approach will help scale multilingual support services more efficiently. There's definitely going to have to be, more standardized training, and certification programs are going to have to sort of meet that demand and make sure that we get a consistent level of quality among interpreters globally. But this is something I'm always up on my soapbox about. Is I would love to see harmonization across all of the certifying agencies. People from NADI speaking to people from CCHI, speaking to people from RID, speaking to the dialogue has to span across all these agencies and organizations and associations, and the onus is on us to make that conversation happen out there. So I think technology it plays a pivotal role in scaling interpretation services by just continued innovation and continue focus on meeting the needs of the folks that support it. We can't do it without interpreters, but also getting that feedback loop from our partners and our end users and the general community that depends on these services on a day-to-day basis.
Do you think there's been a serious shift in the makeup of remote and on-site interpreting since the pandemic? Has the mentality shifted, in your opinion?
Well, listen, the pandemic, that put the spotlight on virtual communications, right? The Zoom boom happened right around the time that COVID was starting to be a real challenge globally, right? We still needed to communicate, and we still needed to communicate in different languages. I think before the pandemic, I think 70 or 80% of interpreting happened on site, and then within 2 weeks, it went from 70 to near nil. But we still all needed to communicate, so it really did put a spotlight on the use of virtual communication and web real-time communications to support language. And through the pandemic, it grew. I think it's now sort of settled right about 50%, right? The face-to-face on-site, interpreting, it's not going away. There are just certain instances and certain situations where human in the mix is absolutely paramount. But what the ability to do remote and on-demand has provided is greater access. There were a lot of doomsayers that said, remote interpreting is going to kill interpreting. It had the exact opposite effect. It created new jobs for interpreters, new opportunities, allows interpreters to work from, practically any location that provided there was sufficient bandwidth, right? And in any time zone as well. So I think that it just has improved access and the efficiency of delivering language access globally.
Yeah, I actually, from my own experience, because my company does a lot of interpreting as well, I've kind of seen it, the on-site rebound quite a bit in the last maybe year or so, because there's simply, like, for example, doctors' offices during the pandemic were a lot more remote, but now that the dust has settled a little bit, they're certainly preferring people to come on site because there's certain interactions that work a lot better when you have somebody in real life with you and ready to assist.
100%. I mean, the access to a face-to-face interpreter, particularly in healthcare situations, or in community situations that can be, or even take courts, like the legal sector as well. These are places where you just having a human there makes profound difference. But then you take emergency situations. Thank goodness we have remote interpreting capabilities now, because it's made a quality of life improvement for people who are in very, very distressing situations. When you're in a distressing situation and you can't communicate because there's no one there to speak your language, it exacerbates that situation tenfold, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are you guys involved in any of the rescue operations that are going on with the current disaster in North Carolina, et cetera?
I have no doubt that we have LSP partners that are supporting that in the field. I mean, obviously Boostlingo is deployed through mobile apps, through iPads, whatever tech can get into the hands of frontline emergency response folks. We've seen amazing stories. We hear about them all the time. It's there's no doubt on that. Every time there's a hurricane or there's some sort of natural disaster, again, language access is one of those things that is that incremental quality of life difference. And it can also be a life or death, or safety thing as well. If you don't know, if you can't communicate where the Red Cross station is, or where to go, or what to do, or distribute that information, it makes it very, very challenging. And language access reduces, certainly helps reduce the real stress that exists in those situations, right?
Flavia, you had a question for Dieter. Feel free to turn on your microphone and ask him.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Happy Translation Day. My question is that I know that Boostlingo specializes in interpreting services and management systems for LSPs, but I shared with you guys at the beginning that I'm a master's degree student in translation and interpretation, and so I wanted to know what Boostlingo offers to the individual interpreter, or if it's something that you guys do, and then also if there are internship of positions available with the company that students in our program could benefit from.
Sure. Well, I'll take the first part of that question first. Boostlingo is free for interpreters, right? When we started this company back in 2016, 2015, 2016, the idea was, to try. My frustration working in the language industry was that interpreting, everybody was using different tools no tools at all, or limited tools to support interpreting. And I thought, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And without interpreters, it doesn't happen. So we wanted to find a way to get interpreters onto a platform that, you come in and it looks familiar and you're comfortable using it, and you can focus on, what you do as an interpreter, which is support folks with language. So we've always, you can be associated with a number of agencies and be use the Boostlingo platform. Like, you might work directly for an agency, or you can sign up through pros.com, something like that. You will be, able to use the tools, right? The second part of your question was, do we have internships? I think we may. That's through our HR department in Austin. So I would probably encourage you to reach out there and see. I actually don't know the answer to that top of my head, to be honest. I think we have had internship programs before in the past. So,
Peter, I'll jump in. I just joined Boostlingo. I'm also a student of Spanish translation and interpretation. So I work at Boostlingo full time and also do school at night. So definitely full-time positions that help you kind of cultivate your passion for language, both like in your work and in your school at night too.
Awesome. Thank you.
There, the proof is in the pudding. That was a conclusive,
I love that.
a conclusive answer, Mallory. I saw Michael is putting his headset back on. I got the impression you wanted to ask something too, Michael, or not. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Good. I'm good.
Okay, you're good. All right. Dieter, we've almost gone an hour without asking any question about Australia. So I thought it would be a good way to end the session and ask you what everybody wants to know about Australia. And is it true that everything in Australia is trying to kill you, Dieter?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely everything is trying to kill you in Australia. There's no doubt about it. It's quite shocking how ubiquitous the deadly creatures are in that country. I don't know how anybody survives, but I've been there now 8 years. So, but
what's your scariest experience so far in Australia?
I had an eastern brown snake chase me one time, and I didn't know it was an eastern brownie at the time, but I just had a sense that they are literally the only snake that will aggressively chase you, by the way. And they also happen to be probably the deadliest snake on the planet. So you really want to get the heck out of there if you can. That was probably, although there was another time. So there's shark alerts in Australia as well. And I was at the beach with friends, and I didn't know what that siren meant. And people are like waving at me, and I'm like waving back, and they're like, no.
Get out of the water.
Get out of the water. Eventually, and I'm slow on the uptake, but I finally did piece it together and got my butt out of that water.
I read these horror stories about box jellyfish too.
And that's the thing is, up in Queensland and in the Northern Territory, the Irukandji, it's a jellyfish about the size of a dime, and it's practically invisible, and it will kill you.
Yeah, that's
totally true.
That wouldn't. How much longer are you here on the West Coast?
So I am here another 4 or 5 days, and then I head back to I'll head back to Sydney on I think on the 4th. I'm headed back.
All right. Well, I'm very happy that we got a chance to chat with you about interpreting in Boostlingo for a full hour. Is there anybody has a question to button it up, or?
I'm just getting warmed up too. It's fun.
Yeah, it went by like this. It always goes by so quickly. But thank you so very much, the whole Boostlingo team, for chiming in on all these questions. And thank you, Dieter, for sharing your interpreting wisdom with us for an hour. We really enjoyed it. And we'd love to have you back some other time to talk a bit more about interpreting services. Thank you, everybody, for joining in this Monday afternoon special edition of LocDiscussion. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Stefan. Cheers.
Thank you.